All right, I got the thumbs up, which means that we're live streaming. But there's a lot of people milling out there in the lobby. So I need a sheepdog to go chase them in. Go herd them up. Did you just bump it up one degree? Uh-huh. Are you lying in the house of God now? Uh-huh. Maybe all this Jacob and Esau business has been a bad influence on you. All right, if we're live, can you go ahead and go to that next slide for me? Outstanding. Well, good morning, class. How's everybody doing today? Very non-committal. Took a week off last week. We had our 5th week fellowship last week, as well as we had a guest speaker from the Williamson County the Williamson County Williams Center. No, I don't think that's it. Williamson County Women's Center, talking about the ministry they do, supporting the life of mothers and their children from pre-birth all the way up through the 2nd year of their life, which is incredible. Offering classes, giving away free necessaries, helping them with formula, diapers, as well as supporting them with some material things as well, like clothes and diaper, or what are those called? I think you put on your shoulder when you're going to burp the baby. What do we call those? Oh, yeah, burp cloth. There you go. All that kind of stuff. So we very much love the ministry of the Williamson County Women's Center, and our fundraiser is almost complete. Next week, y'all got to bring those baby bottles back. So if you haven't filled it up yet, get on it. So to get into class proper, we are studying the book of Genesis, as you probably know. Hopefully you know by now, since we've been doing this since 1997, I think is when we started. Which is a drop in the bucket compared to the timeline of this book. Of course, Genesis begins with the story of creation, our God who made all things. Last week in the sermon, kind of fun, I got to touch on something that I never did that I only briefly touched on in our study of the story of creation, which is to say, the Bible shows us a picture of the Trinity pre-existing creation, which means that before there was space and time, before the first molecule was sprung into existence, already existed love and harmony and fellowship, family, just fundamentals of the universe, which is tremendous. God made all that he would make in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. He didn't rest because he was tired, and this isn't a rest in the sense that there was yet more creating to do, right? But it describes a day of rest for God, which is everything that was made, he made for fellowship with him, and in some regard, for our benefit, right? Whether directly or indirectly. And so even him resting on the Sabbath day was for our benefit too, right? That we would know, hey, you don't have to work yourself to the bone. Even when you're out of paradise, you still have to take that day of rest, both for your body and for your soul. A day to recuperate and reconnect. And a day also, when you're not working, is a day that you have to trust God to provide anyways. Adam and Eve desired what they didn't know would be harmful for them, but God had told them no, and trusting him should have been enough. But they desired the knowledge of evil, and they got it. And along with it, the whole of creation was corrupted. And, we make this point sometimes. I do think it's a worthwhile thing to understand that the way the Bible describes the problem of sin, it is not just a moral problem with human behavior. The problem of sin is universal. Not only are Adam and Eve and their offspring going to desire things they shouldn't and do things they shouldn't, that's maybe an obvious application of sin. But God says to Adam things like, well, because of what you've done, even the ground is cursed, right? Thorns and thistles and all that sort of thing. And I think we can see with a more modern sensibility of what the motion of the universe and all that stuff, that sin drives a metaphorical distance between us and one another and between us and God. But also we see that sort of the whole universe is decaying and drifting apart. These are both things that scientists have measured. The reason that the Big Bang is a popular theory is because we can see that the whole universe is expanding, which sounds good, maybe, if you don't really think it through. But when you think it through, you realize expanding means everything's getting farther apart. Right? The expansion is the distance between things, not a growth of new things. So the metaphor used by some scientists to kind of help you understand this expansion that we're seeing is they would say, imagine a loaf of raisin bread before it's baked. You've got the dough with the raisins all within it, and then as it bakes, it rises, and that rising is any given raisin gets farther away from every other raisin. Yeah? That's kind of a picture of what is happening with the universe. Not only that, we have a concept that I think a lot of people in the ancient world didn't, which is that stars die, planets grow cold, and even our own soul, our own star, the sun, right, that essentially gives energy and life to the planet that we live on, heat, so many necessary benefits, it has a lifespan, right? So we can't expect that sun is going to exist forever. Maybe in a perfect universe it did, but in the universe in which we live, it will not. Interestingly, by the way, one of the pictures given of paradise in the book of Revelation, which you have studied with me, I think all of you. And if anybody watching at home didn't get that opportunity, the whole 4,000-week study, we have a playlist on our YouTube channel. You can go check it out. I think it's a very worthwhile study. I certainly learned a lot, and I certainly felt much more confident about reading the book of Revelation by the time we were done with it. I hope you did too. But one of the pictures we get of paradise, the world to come in Revelation, is that God himself will be our light. Right? Just to say, we will no longer be dependent upon a light source that will gradually wane. Right? But God himself, who is eternal, will be our light. All right, so we have this universal problem of sin, and also at the very same day that happened, God promises to send a Savior. Interestingly, it comes out as a threat, right? He doesn't say it to Adam and Eve, but he says it about Eve. He says it to the snake. Cursed, you're going to crawl along the ground and eat the dust. You're going to crawl on your belly and eat the dust of the ground. And I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. You will strike his heel, and he will crush your head. That is, I think, a tremendously poetic way of describing exactly what happened as Jesus was crucified, right? Being struck by the snake, and yet in the same time, in that very same motion, breaking the power of Satan and death, beginning to heal the wound that Adam and Eve caused on the universe. From the Garden of Eden, we get the stories of Cain and Abel, in which we're one generation out and we already have a murder. Um, our family played Clue last night. I had never played Clue until last night. It was an experience. We actually enjoyed it quite a bit, which surprised me because sometimes those older games don't hold up so well as you remember, but it was fun. And there was a mystery, who did it, where did they do it, and with what? When Cain kills Abel, there's no mystery, right? Like the suspect list is Cain. The where is the field, and with what doesn't matter. He struck him dead. God tells Cain that he's going to have a hard life because of this, and Cain is already fearful of that. But God also says, "I will protect you." And if anybody takes vengeance for Abel on you, I will avenge you 7 times. So you can see he's got this mark on him. The mark of Cain in popular fiction is often presented as like a sign of evil. Like, it's like, this marks the Antichrist or something. Like, that's not how I read the story. I read the story that God put a mark on Cain so that people would know not to mess with him because he was under God's protection. But the other one's spookier and makes for better TV, I guess. Cain goes off, he settles his own city, technology, etc., etc. From Seth, who is the replacement son, we get the line that leads eventually down to Noah. And Noah lives in an exceptionally wicked time, a time when the Bible describes it as like everybody is murdering all the time. And sort of the poster boy for this sort of attitude is Lamech, who's a guy who has 2 wives and boasts about how he'll avenge himself 77 times. Comparing himself, by the way, he says if God will avenge Cain 7 times, Lamech will be avenged 77 times. So it's clear that this isn't an accident. He is definitely like putting himself in a higher position than that of God. The world is wicked enough that God is grieved that he ever made it in the first place, but he doesn't utterly destroy it. He preserves enough animals to get the whole thing going again, as well as one family of people, which is Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their sons' daughters, or their sons' wives, Noah's daughters-in-law. They're carried through the flood, and they sort of restart things. Shortly thereafter, the Tower of Babel happens, where human hubris and the desire to supplant the need for God with technology and progress is deemed by God wicked enough that he has to confound their efforts. And I will say that the spirit of Babel is still alive and well to this day. This goes for everybody who gleefully quotes Nietzsche in saying that God is dead and we have killed him. The spirit that says religion is for a time when people don't understand things, but now we have science, so we don't need religion anymore. That spirit persists in people who are looking at, what was it in the 50s or 60s, where the promise was better living through chemistry, and now the promise seems to be the world is headed for destruction, but maybe we can make for ourselves an intelligence that will solve the problems too big for us to solve. The spirit of the Tower of Babel is alive and well to this day. God confounds their languages, which is a gentle sort of punishment. I mean, think about it. The people are scattered. By the way, that confounding of languages is sort of undone in the story of Pentecost, as God unites people by speaking to them in their various tongues, rather than dispersing them by their various tongues. And we also see it promised in the Great Commission, as we're supposed to, take the gospel to every tribe and nation and tongue. we move along to the story of Abram, later Abraham. I'm going to talk about him a lot in the sermon today because he is pointed at pretty firmly by Paul in our text from Romans. So we'll be talking about Abraham. Hopefully you remember his story well. A man of great faith at times. A man of growing faith, I think, is an even better way of understanding it. And it is through his lineage that God has promised to bless the world. And with the benefit of hindsight, we can say, yes, because it is through his lineage that the Christ will come. And the lineage of Christ, the lineage of Abraham, as Paul will point out in our reading today, is reckoned not through the law, but rather through faith. Right? Abraham believed, and it was accounted to him as righteousness. Also worth noting, the law wasn't given yet, not in a formal way. That doesn't come until Moses. That's next book. Like, we got to get through this book first. And that's 400 years in the future, plus or minus. So we've got a little time before the law is given. And yet, Abraham is accounted righteous because of his faith. God chooses him and blesses him by faith. Abraham is very advanced in years, 75 when he leaves his parents' house. His wife is 65, and I don't know, I would say that the ladies in this room, I have found out occasionally that they are that they look very young, and yet I would imagine not many of you were looking to start a family at 65, and yet that was the promise God had made, and so it takes well over a decade and a half, I think, before God fulfills that promise by giving Abraham and Sarah their son Isaac. You all know about the adventures and misadventures of Abraham. I don't have to rehash all that. Isaac is born. He is the only child of Abraham and Sarah. Abraham does have other children, but not with Sarah, only Isaac. And it is to Isaac that all the promises and covenants that God made will be given. When it's time for Isaac to have a wife, Abraham sends his servant back to Haran, where his father Terah established their family. And so Abraham's servant, with God's help and through prayer, discovers a beautiful young lady by the name of Rebecca. And he goes back to the house of Rebecca. She lives with her brother Laban. And says, I would like to take Rebecca home to marry my master's son, Isaac. And Laban's like, I don't know. Can we think about it? And Abraham's servant says, actually, no, I was instructed, bring her home now or come home empty-handed, but that's my job, right? And Laban's like, maybe we should at least ask her what she thinks. And she goes, yeah, okay. And so she comes home with them. Isaac and Rebecca lock eyes across the field, and there's a swelling symphony of strings. Yeah, they frolic to each other across the meadow. And it's a lovely little love story. It takes them a long time to have a kid too, and when they do have a kid, God gives them double trouble, right? They have twins, Jacob and Esau. And before they're even born, they're already struggling with each other. They're already fighting each other in the womb. Rebecca is distressed enough about this that she prays to God, like, hey, am I okay? Is this okay? And God gives her an answer. He says, yes, these two boys are going to contend with each other, and the older will serve the younger. And so the two boys are born, Jacob and Esau. Jacob hanging on to Esau's heel as they are born. And emblematic probably of both Jacob sort of mooching off of Esau's efforts as well as being a guy who will trip him up. But Esau is not completely in the right either. So as the two boys grow up, Esau is very manly, but also kind of thick. Thick-muscled, thick-haired, thick-brained, right? Just kind of a dumb guy. And Jacob's very clever, but he's a homebody. He's kind of mama's boy. Esau is Isaac's favorite. Jacob is Rebekah's favorite. And there's an incident where Jacob manipulates, I suppose, Esau into trading his birthright over for a bowl of stew. And again, it's the kind of thing that Jacob should not have been doing in the first place, but also a foolish thing for Esau to do. It's not an inescapable trap. Esau could just say, you know what, I can just wait for my dinner. Or I'll go cook something. I'll go make a PB&J. Like, he traded quick satisfaction away for the inheritance for the rest of his life. So, not leadership material, right? But he doesn't like it. Later on, Isaac is preparing for his end of life. He's sort of making his final arrangements. This is sort of like, I think you could liken it to, he's sitting down to write his will and testament, right? His last will and testament. It's not exactly what it is, but it's kind of like that. So he says to Esau, all right, I want to give you the big blessing, okay? But why don't you go hunt me up some food, and I'll do this, and then I'll be ready to pass whenever it happens, and you'll be all set. And Rebekah hears, she conspires with Jacob to pretend to be Esau, to pretend to have hunted quickly, to deliver up the thing, the hair. It's a whole thing. You guys know the story of Isaac feeling the arms and smelling the clothes and all that stuff. They pull the old switcheroo, and Isaac gives a blessing to Jacob, which is beautiful. Hey, you're going to be nurtured by the land and by the rain, and you're going to have a great time, and all of your brothers will serve you. And then Esau comes home. Jacob leaves. Esau comes in, and Esau's like, "Hey, Dad, I'm here for my blessing." And Isaac's like, "Oh no!" And Esau's like, "Oh no!" And they realize what happened, and he gets a lesser blessing from Isaac, but that relationship is damaged forever. Well, presumably forever. And Esau is so upset about this that he comforts himself by speaking aloud, probably repeatedly, that as soon as Dad passes away, I'm going to kill my brother. Now, first off, if you want to do that, you keep that to yourself, but also you just shouldn't do that. No. But Rebekah hears about it, and so she's like, okay, we got to get you out of here, because if I lose my husband and my favorite son on the same day, I will be inconsolable. So we need to get you back to my brother Laban's house. Y'all remember Laban, right? So Rebekah sidles up to Isaac and says, honey, I've been thinking about Jacob. He needs a wife. Not one of these stinky Canaanite girls. They're not good. Have any ideas? And so Isaac's like, oh, you know what? We could send him back to Laban's house. I met you because you're a good Haranian girl. I don't know what you call people from Haran. Right? You're a good God-fearing girl. I bet you there's a good God-fearing girl for him over there. And Rebekah's like, send him to Laban, that's brilliant, huh? Let's send him to Laban's house. Let's go. Right? And so Jacob travels off to Laban's house, and Isaac thinks it's his idea. If you haven't noticed, Abram's family, especially Isaac, Rebekah, and it's going to get worse, they're deceitful and manipulative. They're also the great heroes of the faith. We have to be able to work with that in our minds, right? This is one of the things that I think is compelling evidence that these stories are actually true. Because if you wanted to write a myth of the great holy people of the faith, these aren't them. But Jacob is off toward Laban's house, and on the way, he lays his... Oh, yeah, well, we'll just cover that here in a second. He lays his head down on a rock, goes to sleep, and he has a dream in which he sees a ladder or a staircase up to heaven, Jimmy Page playing guitar, angels going up and down, and God promises to him, as he did Abraham. And Jacob says to himself, this must be where God lives. We're going to call this place Beth-El, house of God. And he stood up, that rock that he used as a pillow, he stands it up so that it can be a testament, one of those Ebenezers like Abraham used to leave behind. And he says, yes, now Isaac's God will be my God as well. If you remember back when he stole the blessing, he blasphemed against God, right? He says, he came in with that goat that they slaughtered, and he was pretending to be Esau. He came in with that goat, and Isaac says, wow, you got this. You hunted really fast today. And he said, well, the Lord your God helped me. And I believe it was you, Mike, that said, wait, he said the Lord your God. He didn't say the Lord our God. And I think that's a good insight because it's here at Bethel that he says, yes, now this Lord is my God. It's going to be a bit of a turning point for Jacob in his life, but we'll see that here as we move forward into the story. Last week, we started in on chapter 29, Genesis 29. So we'll review a little bit of that and keep moving forward. So verses 1 through 8, Jacob approaches and he sees these herds that need to be watered, and there's a well, but there's a big stone in the way, and he moves the stone for this beautiful shepherdess girl, and they kind of recognize, oh, you're from the house of Haran, and I'm you're Laban's daughter, and I was coming to find a wife, and you're pretty, and now I'm going to water the cattle for you, just like my mom. Like my mom watered the camels. And then like they got married. And maybe that's how we do it. You water the cattle, and then you get married. So he waters the cattle, and goes over and kisses her. I guess romance, I don't know. All right. Verse 13. This is where we'll start out properly for today. Verse 12. Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. Remember, her father is the brother of his mom. What's that? Yeah. Yeah. And when Rebekah had left, in a world with no internet, no phone, no postal service, there's probably every reason to believe that Laban said goodbye and didn't hear from her for the rest of her life. So Hope it worked out. So he says, Rebecca, it's my mom. She's doing great. She had kids. Look at us. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. So you can imagine Laban probably being relieved. His beautiful sister is fine, had a good life with a husband who loved her, which Laban never got to meet. Laban never met Isaac. It says that he told Laban all these things. All what things? Did he tell Laban that he's hiding out from Esau? I think he probably did. Because the idea here is he didn't just come to find a wife and go home. He came here to wait out his father's death and enough cooling down time that Esau wouldn't kill him when he comes home. So he's not planning on staying for a week. He's planning to stay for a while. So he probably had to tell him kind of the whole story, right? Now, I do want to point this out. This plan of escaping to Laban's house means that Jacob will not be there when his father dies. He will not be there to give his father a proper burial. He will not be there to comfort his mother or to care for her as she is a widow. He will not be there for any of that. And that's, her plan. You could say that's a mother's sacrifice for her son. But it probably didn't have to happen. If the family had just been honest and not deceitful with one another, you wouldn't have to have a brother trying to kill him. God told Rebekah, your older son will serve your younger son. If God is faithful to his promises, do they have to engineer the situation that Jacob has to steal from Esau to make that a reality? They probably don't have to do it that way. Any more than Abraham had to lie about his wife being his sister to protect his family. He didn't need to do that. A lot of the messiness, and again, I'll talk about this stuff in the sermon today a little bit. A lot of the messiness in this family history just comes from people not letting God fulfill his own promises. They're trying to force their way into it. This is why Ishmael was born in the first place. Ishmael and his descendants will be antagonists to Israel. But that whole situation arose because Sarah and Abraham were not willing to just wait on God. They thought they had to take it into their own hands to fulfill God's promises. See that same pattern repeated here in Jacob's life. And there are real consequences, real tragic consequences to it. Then Laban said to Jacob, this is verse 15, because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now, hopefully you can see that there's an assumption going on here, right? Oh, you're going to stay with me for a while? Great. You're going to work for me. That's not a debate. Those are the terms. However, but I'll give you the family discount, right? You won't just be room and board. You deserve some compensation for your efforts. We're family, after all. What would you like to be paid in? Now, Laban had two daughters, verse 16. Now, Laban had two daughters. The name of the older was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. All right. That's a weird thing to say by our reckoning, to say that Rachel had weak eyes. I'm sorry, that Leah had weak eyes. Probably that's some sort of a shorthand for Leah was unattractive by their standards. Certainly by comparison, Rachel was more attractive. What do we mean by weak eyes? Does it mean that she has some sort of a eye condition? Maybe. I don't think it necessarily means that she has poor eyesight. Because that doesn't really track. Like, why would poor eyesight be contrasted against a sister who's beautiful? Like, yeah, she's pretty, but she's nearsighted. Like, that's sort of a non sequitur. Yeah. 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 Sometimes called a lazy eye. Yep. Yeah, and it could be that, right? Like maybe she was a little bit cross-eyed or a little bit, whatever. A lot of the commentaries that I was looking at suggested maybe she had a condition that made her eyes like dull or like pale or milky, something that might be. And perhaps in that culture, eyes were like the standard of beauty. Certainly, eyes are part of how we conceive of beauty today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Correct. Yes, correct. Which man, they pulled no punches in naming people, didn't they? All right, so he's got two daughters, and here's what here's that's backstory, so we can understand what comes next. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. It's so romantic, isn't it? It's like the beginning of The Princess Bride, Wesley the farm boy, as you wish. Yeah, eager to serve because he loved her. 7 years fly by. But I want you to consider this. I didn't look to see if the math is there. I don't know how old Isaac is when he makes this journey. But I think it's safe to say he's a young man. Maybe upper teens, maybe middle 20s. I wouldn't put him higher than that, probably. At least not when I picture the story. 7 years in that time of your life is very significant and very formative. Up until now, Jacob has been a homebody, stayed with mom, spoiled and favored. Now, he's out there working the herds. Probably not the golden boy. He's a lodger in the home of his uncle who he's never met before. 7 years like that's a long time to think about your choices. And that's definitely time enough for some character development. So he works happily for 7 years. And then he gets to wed his beloved. So, Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him as but a few days because of the love he had for her. Are they courting during this time? Probably not. I would suspect it's probably both not as open for men and women to hang out and stuff as it is in our world today. But it's also probably also not as like restricted and rigid as you might think in like Victorian times. But they definitely would have had an interest in keeping the two of them from marrying prematurely, right? So there's probably some supervision, but you can imagine that they are in the same estate. They probably do get to see each other. They might get to share meals together, you know. But they probably have a growing relationship during this time. Jacob and beautiful Rachel. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went with her. Now, you know, whenever I picture this story, I always put my modern sensibilities on it. You know, they have a wedding, and the bride comes out, and she's got the veil on, but like, it's not that. It's not that. They have a party, and then when it's nighttime, he's supposed to consummate the relationship, which is initiating marriage. They don't have electric lights. They might not even have oil lamps, and probably don't have torches in a tent, or like, you know, it's dark. And so Dad brings in the older daughter. This isn't a silly mix-up. This is a deliberate deceit. The terms were clear. I will work for 7 years so that I may marry your younger daughter, whose name is Rachel. Right? All of that was explicit. Laban pulls the old switcheroo. In the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah, save that name for later, to his daughter Leah to be her servant. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah! There's an exclamation point in the ESV, which is great because there's no punctuation in the Hebrew Bible, but I just think that's great. Feel bad for Jacob. Kinda. Is this not directly parallel to what he did to his own father? One sister in place of another, one son in place of another. Dad had poor eyesight, couldn't tell them apart. Jacob, probably. Not only is it dark, but if they've been feasting all day, he might have enjoyed some wine. Laban's calculating about this. He knows what he's doing. Now, his motivation, we can only speculate at. He's going to give a testimony, but I don't trust Laban as far as I can throw him, and he's long since dead, so I can't throw him at all. Verse 25, in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob, you got to pronounce all the punctuation. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "It's not done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." You know, I don't like any of these people. I wish I did. So Laban's saying, you know, hey, look, wherever you're from, they can do whatever, but around here, you can't go marrying off the younger daughter before the older daughter. Well, why didn't you say that to me 7 years ago or last week? Now, it's been 7 years. Let's process this for a minute. Is Jacob ready to go home? I don't know. We don't know if Isaac has died yet. We don't know if Esau has relaxed yet. I don't even necessarily know if Jacob would have left with Rachel right away. It seems like whatever having weak eyes is has made it hard for Leah to be married off. So through deceit, Laban's making this happen. Now, I don't condone this. But I do wonder if God is working in this to try and help Jacob understand the gravity of what he has done. I wonder if this is God working repentance over the course of 14 years and whatever else in the heart of Jacob. Because he's got big plans for this family, and you can't. I don't believe it's God's desire that Israel, that's what Jacob's going to be a family of rascals and thieves and liars and swindlers. So he's working in his heart, through his life. You could call this justice, but I don't even think it's about justice. I think this is preparation, trying to help Jacob see what he's doing. And he has no leverage in the situation, right? You have now wedded this other woman. What are his alternatives? Cut his losses and leave, I guess, but he's been 7 years fawning over Rachel. The time passed quickly because of his great love for her. He's not leaving without her. But this is one of the many instances we have seen in Genesis of polygamy. And as I have made the case to you, while it is seen in the Bible, it's always a mess. And I think it is never God's design. But God does work in messy situations too. Okay? 28. Jacob did so and completed her week. So that's like honeymoon period. Then Laban gave his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah, remember that name, to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob went into Rachel also. He loved Rachel more than Leah and served Laban for 7 years. Okay, 2 women married to the same man. He clearly has a favorite. What is that going to do to the relationship between those sisters? It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bore a son. She called his name Reuben. For she said, "The Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me." Is that how it works? Well, I think he's got duties to uphold. She conceived again and bore a son. Because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has also given me this son. She called his name Simeon. Again she conceived and bore a son, and said, "Now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Mike, does it sound like he's attached to her yet? Shame on me for phrasing. Therefore, his name was called Levi. She conceived again and bore a son and said, "This time I will praise the Lord." Therefore, she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. Any of those names stick out as important to you? Which ones? Judah and Levi. Yeah. What's significant about Levi? Yep, that's the family from which the priests will come. What's significant about Judah? It's the line from which Jesus will come. It is also a tribe that is so prominent that when the nation splits, it will be called Israel and Judah. And it is through Judah that we get the term Jew and Jewish even to this day. Wait, you mean Jesus didn't come from Rachel, the beloved, beautiful one? I wonder what that means. Well, it's 7 minutes till worship, so I'm going to have to release you. But we'll pick up at chapter 30 next week for some more baby having. Otherwise, because we got to get to at least 12, right? At least. So go ahead, freshen up your coffee, do what you got to do, come on back for worship.